want someone younger, Darren. You're hopeless in bed now.
Happy anniversary to you too, sweetheart.
20 years of marriage, and my wife chose our anniversary dinner to deliver the final blow. I want someone younger, Darren. You're hopeless in bed now. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nadia said it like she was ordering dessert. Her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around a wine glass that cost more than most people's car payments. The candlelight flickered across her face, highlighting the Botox that kept her forehead smooth as marble and just as expressive. I set down my fork, the $50 steak suddenly tasting like cardboard. Happy anniversary to you too, sweetheart. She didn't even flinch. Don't be dramatic. I'm being honest. We both know the spark is gone. The spark. Right. Like our marriage was a campfire that just needed more kindling. I looked across the table at this woman I'd built a life with, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and felt something cold settle in my chest. So what are you suggesting? I asked, though I already knew. The signs had been there for months. The new gym membership, the sudden interest in Instagram, the boutique staying open later and later for inventory. I'm not ready for divorce, she said quickly, like she was throwing me a bone. But I need excitement, adventure. You understand. I understood perfectly. She wanted to keep the house, the credit cards, and the business I'd funded while she played house with some 20-something who still thought energy drinks were a food group. Who is he? Her cheeks flushed, and for a second, I saw a flash of the girl I'd married. Then the mask slipped back into place. It's not about someone else. It's about us. About what we've become. Bullshit. I'd been married to Nadia long enough to know her tells, the way she touched her earring when she lied, the way she couldn't meet my eyes when she was hiding something. Right now, she was practically broadcasting her guilt in neon letters. I pulled out my phone and opened her Instagram. She'd been careless lately, or maybe she wanted me to find out. There, in the comments of her latest boutique post, was a string of fire emojis from someone called Casey Fit 27. His profile showed a shirtless guy with abs that probably required more maintenance than my vintage Mustang. Casey, I said, watching her face go white. Interesting name for a 27-year-old barista. How did you... Your phone's been buzzing all evening, same notification, sound every time, Instagram DMs. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly calm. So how long? She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. Darren, please, let me explain. How long? 3 months. The words came out in a whisper. But it's not serious. It's just fun. Fun. 3 months of fun while I worked 60-hour weeks to keep her boutique afloat and her credit cards from melting. 3 months of her coming home smelling like someone else's cologne and telling me she was tired when I reached for her in bed. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and dropped $200 on the table. Enough to cover dinner and a generous tip for the waitress who'd have to deal with whatever came next. Where are you going? Nadia's voice cracked. Home. To think. Darren, wait. We can work this out. We can go to counseling or... I turned back to her, and whatever she saw in my face made her shut up fast. You wanted excitement, Nadia. Congratulations. You're about to get more than you bargained for. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and rage. 20 years. 20 years of building something together, and she'd torched it all for some kid who probably still lived with roommates. Our house sat on 2 acres in the suburbs, a colonial I'd bought and renovated myself. Nadia's BMW sat in the circular driveway, pristine and gleaming under the porch lights. My workshop was around back, a converted garage where I restored classic cars and tried to maintain what was left of my sanity. I didn't go inside. Instead, I headed straight for the workshop, flipped on the lights, and opened a beer. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings helped settle my nerves. This was my space, the only place in the world where things made sense, where problems had solutions and hard work actually meant something. My phone buzzed, a text from Nadia. "Please come inside. We need to talk." I deleted it and opened my laptop. Time to do some research on my wife's new boyfriend. Casey Holt, 27, worked at Grind Coffee downtown. His social media was a shrine to his own abs, filled with workout videos and motivational quotes about living your best life. He had 12,000 followers and a verified checkmark, which apparently made him an influencer. His recent posts told an interesting story. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, weekend trips to Chicago and Milwaukee, a new watch that cost more than most people made in a month, all funded by what? His barista salary? I dug deeper, cross-referencing the dates of his posts with our credit card statements. There it was. Every expensive dinner, every weekend getaway, every piece of jewelry he'd probably given her as a gift, all paid for with money from the boutique's business account. Money I'd put there. My phone rang. Frank Gage, my oldest friend, and the only cop I trusted. "Darren? Jesus, it's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "I need a favor, Frank. A big one." "Talk to me." I told him everything. The affair, the money, the paper trail I'd just uncovered. Frank listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I'd always liked about him. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "How much money are we talking about?" 40,000, maybe 50, all from the business account. "And you're the primary on that account?" "I'm the only name on it. The boutique is registered as an LLC under my social security number. Nadia handles the day-to-day operations, but legally, it's my business." Frank whistled low. "That's embezzlement, brother. She's been stealing from you to fund her affair." "Can you help me document it?" "Already am. I'm pulling up the corporate filings now." Darren Cole, sole proprietor of Nadia's Boutique LLC, incorporated 3 years ago. He paused. "You know what this means, right? You can shut her down tomorrow if you want to." I looked around my workshop, at the tools I'd collected over 20 years of marriage, at the cars I'd restored with my own hands. Everything in this room was mine, built or bought with money I'd earned. Everything in that house, everything in that boutique, everything in our shared life, it was all mine too. Legally, morally, and now I was going to make sure everyone knew it. "Frank, I'm going to need Carmen Santos's number." "The divorce lawyer? Darren, are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Carmen Santos looked like she could cut glass with her cheekbones and had probably done it more than once. Her law office downtown was all chrome and leather, the kind of place that charged by the minute just for breathing their air. "Mr. Cole," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. "Frank filled me in on the basics. Show me what you've got." I spread the printouts across her conference table. Bank statements, credit card records, screenshots of Casey's Instagram posts with timestamps that matched every suspicious transaction. 20 years in automotive engineering had taught me to be thorough, and I'd spent the entire night building an airtight case. "Impressive work," Carmen said, scanning the documents. "Your wife has been systematically transferring money from the business account to fund her affair. This is textbook embezzlement." "What are my options?" She leaned back in her chair, and I caught a glimpse of the shark that had made her reputation. "We can file for divorce and demand full restitution. Since you're the sole owner of the LLC, we can freeze all business accounts immediately. No access to funds, no ability to operate, no payroll for employees." "How quickly?" "I can have the paperwork filed by noon. The freeze will be in effect by close of business today." I thought about Nadia, probably still in bed, planning her next rendezvous with her boy toy. She had no idea what was coming. "Do it." "There's more." Carmen continued. Since the boutique operates out of a building you own, we can also terminate the lease agreement. Legally, she'd have 30 days to vacate, but given the embezzlement, how long can you make it? 72 hours. Emergency eviction due to breach of fiduciary duty. I signed the papers, wrote Carmen a check for her retainer, and walked out into the morning sun feeling lighter than I had in months. Phase 1 was complete. Now, for Phase 2. The boutique sat on Main Street between a yoga studio and an organic juice bar, the kind of trendy shopping district that attracted women with more money than sense. Nadia had spent a fortune on the renovation, turning a cramped storefront into an Instagram-worthy shrine to overpriced clothing and accessories. I parked across the street and watched through the window as she flitted around, arranging displays and chatting with customers. She looked happy, carefree, like a woman without a care in the world. That was about to change. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Papers filed. Freeze in effect in 3 hours. I drove to Grind Coffee, Casey's workplace. It was exactly what I'd expected. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, and a chalkboard menu that required a PhD to decipher. The kind of place that charged $8 for coffee and called it artisanal. Casey stood behind the counter, his perfectly styled hair catching the afternoon light as he worked the espresso machine. He was handsome. I'd give him that. The kind of pretty boy looks that probably made middle-aged women feel young again. I ordered a black coffee and watched him work. His hands were soft, uncalloused, probably never done a day of real work in his life. When he handed me the cup, I made sure our eyes met. Thanks, Casey. He froze. Do I know you? Not yet, but you will. I left him standing there, confusion written across his perfect features, and headed back to my workshop to wait. The call came at 4:30. Darren! Nadia's voice was shrill, panicked. What did you do? My card got declined at the grocery store. Did it? That's weird. Don't play games with me. I tried to access the business account and it's frozen. The employees can't get paid. There are customers trying to return items and I can't process the refunds. I took a sip of my beer, savoring the moment. Sounds like a problem. Fix this. Now. I don't think I will. Silence. Then, in a smaller voice, what do you want? I want my $47,000 back. I want Casey out of the picture. And I want you to remember that everything you have, everything you are, exists because I built it. You're being crazy. People are going to think you're having some kind of breakdown. Let them think whatever they want. You've got 72 hours to vacate the boutique. After that, the locks get changed. I hung up and opened another beer. Through the workshop window, I could see lights coming on in the house as Nadia arrived home. Part of me expected her to come storming out to confront me, but she stayed inside, probably calling her lawyer friends, trying to find a way out of the trap she'd built for herself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Casey. I smiled and typed back, No, we don't. Another text. I know you're Nadia's husband. This doesn't have to get ugly. Too late for that. Meet me at Grind tomorrow at 2. We can work this out like adults. I set the phone down and went back to work on the '67 Camaro I'd been restoring. Let him sweat. Let them both sweat. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning, I drove past the boutique on my way to get coffee. There was a crowd gathered outside, customers trying to get in, employees standing around looking confused. A hastily written sign in the window read, "Temporarily closed due to technical difficulties." Technical difficulties. I liked that. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Grind Coffee. Casey was waiting at a corner table, looking like he hadn't slept. Good. Mr. Cole? He stood up, extending his hand. I ignored it. You wanted to talk. Talk. He sat back down, running his fingers through his hair. Look, I know this is awkward, But Nadia and I, we care about each other. She's not happy in her marriage. And that's your problem, Hal. She deserves better than what she has. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low and steady. What she has is a business I built, a house I bought, and a lifestyle I fund. What she deserves is a reality check. It's not about money. Everything's about money, kid. Especially when you're spending mine. His face flushed. I never asked her to pay for anything. But you didn't say no, did you? When she picked up the check for those fancy dinners? When she bought you that watch? When she paid for your weekend trips? He looked down at his hands, and I knew I had him. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to delete her number, block her on social media, and pretend she doesn't exist. And if I ever see you near her again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you. I stood up, dropping a $5 bill on the table. Enjoy your coffee, Casey, and enjoy looking for a new job. I hear the manager here is a friend of mine. I walked out, leaving him sitting there with his mouth open. Phase 2 complete. The next few days were beautiful to watch. Nadia's perfect little world crumbled piece by piece, and I had a front row seat to the destruction. First, the boutique employees started quitting when their paychecks bounced. Then the suppliers began demanding payment for outstanding invoices. By the end of the week, there were 3 different collection agencies calling the business line, and Nadia was screening every call. I knew because I still had access to the business voicemail. Technically, it was my business after all. Mr. Cole, this is Janet from Wholesale Fashion Direct. We show an outstanding balance of $12,000 on your account. Please call us immediately to arrange payment. This is Mike from Metro Collections. We're calling regarding the overdue balance on account number. Darren, it's Lena. That was Nadia's best friend and business partner, though not legally. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're destroying everything Nadia worked for. Call me back. Lena Rowe. I'd never liked her, and the feeling was mutual. She was one of those women who smiled to your face while sharpening knives behind your back. She'd been encouraging Nadia's affair from the beginning, probably living vicariously through her friend's midlife crisis. Time to pay Lena a visit. I found her at the yoga studio next to the boutique, leading a class of suburban housewives through their morning stretches. She saw me through the window and her face went pale, but she finished the session like a professional. Darren. She met me outside, her yoga mat tucked under her arm like armor. We need to talk. I was thinking the same thing. There's a coffee shop around the corner, neutral territory. We walked in silence, the tension thick enough to cut. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd, which was perfect. I wanted witnesses for what came next. You're destroying her, Lena said as soon as we sat down. Nadia's reputation, her business, everything she's worked for. Everything I worked for, I corrected. Everything I paid for. Everything I built while she played dress-up and pretended to be a businesswoman. She earned her success. With my money, in my building, using my credit. Lena leaned forward, her voice dropping to a hiss. You're a controlling, abusive asshole, and everyone can see it. Nadia deserves happiness. Happiness? Is that what we're calling embezzlement now? She never stole anything from you. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd prepared. Bank transfers, credit card statements, Casey's Instagram posts with their timestamps. I spread them across the table like playing cards. $47,000, I said. Transferred from the business account to fund her affair. That's grand larceny in this state. Lena's face went white as she scanned the documents. You can't prove she gave this money to him. Watch me. I stood up, but she grabbed my arm. Wait, what do you want? I want her to admit what she did. I want her to pay back every penny, and I want you to stop encouraging her to destroy our marriage. And if she doesn't? I looked down at this woman who'd been poisoning my wife's ear for months, filling her head with ideas about deserving better and living her truth. Then she can explain it to a judge. That evening I was working in my garage when Frank stopped by with a six-pack and news. "Your boy Casey got fired today," he said, handing me a beer. "No kidding?" Turns out his manager found out about the affair. Didn't like the drama it was bringing to the business. Frank grinned. Amazing how word gets around in a small town. Amazing. There's more. I did some digging on his background. Kid's got a record. Nothing major, but he's been arrested twice for bar fights and once for vandalism. Vandalism? Keyed his ex-girlfriend's car when she broke up with him. Charges were dropped, but it shows a pattern. I filed that information away for future use. What about Nadia? She's been calling divorce lawyers all day. Problem is, most of the good ones in town know you or have worked with you before. Conflict of interest. And the others? Want a retainer she can't afford. We drank our beers in comfortable silence, listening to the radio and watching the sun set through the garage windows. For the first time in weeks, I felt something approaching peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Nadia. "I'm sorry. Please come inside so we can talk." I showed it to Frank, who snorted. Too little? Too late? Way too late. But I was curious what she had to say. I finished my beer, told Frank to lock up when he left, and walked across the yard to the house I'd called home for 15 years. Nadia was waiting in the living room, still dressed in the designer clothes that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She'd been crying, her makeup smudged, and her perfectly styled hair disheveled. "Thank you for coming in," she said. "You've got 5 minutes. I made a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. But we can fix this." "Can we?" She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of her perfume. The same scent she'd been wearing the night she told me I was hopeless in bed. "I ended it with Casey. It's over." "When?" "This afternoon. I told him we couldn't see each other anymore." "And the money?" She looked down at her hands. "I'll pay it back, somehow. Somehow. I'll get a job, a real job. I'll sell my jewelry, my clothes, whatever it takes." I almost believed her. The tears looked real, and the desperation in her voice was convincing, but I'd learned not to trust anything that came out of her mouth. "What about Lena? What about her?" "She's been encouraging this from the beginning, filling your head with ideas about deserving better." Nadia's face hardened slightly. "Lena's my friend. She was just trying to help." "Help you destroy our marriage?" "Help me find happiness." And there it was. Even now, even after everything, she still thought she was the victim in this story. Still believed she deserved sympathy for betraying the man who'd given her everything. "Your 5 minutes are up," I said. "Darren, please. I love you. I've always loved you." "No, you don't. You love what I provide. The house, the cars, the credit cards, the business. You love the lifestyle, but you don't love me, and you probably never did." I walked toward the door, but she grabbed my arm. "Don't leave. Not like this." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "Let go, Nadia. We can start over. We can go to counseling, take a trip, renew our vows. Let go." Something in my voice must have gotten through to her, because she dropped her hand and stepped back. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The eviction notice was served on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my car as the sheriff's deputy handed Nadia the papers outside the boutique, her face crumpling as she read the legal language that spelled out her doom. 72 hours to vacate. All business operations to cease immediately. Any remaining inventory to be cataloged and held as potential assets in the pending divorce proceedings. Carmen had outdone herself. I drove to the hardware store and bought new locks for the boutique. Industrial-grade lock bolts that would take a crowbar to break. While I was there, I picked up some security cameras, the kind that uploaded directly to the cloud. If Nadia tried anything stupid, I'd have it all on video. My phone rang as I loaded the supplies into my truck. Unknown number. Hello? You snake. Casey's voice was slurred, angry. You got me fired. Did I? You know you did. You and your cop buddy spread lies about me all over town. I don't spread lies, Casey. I don't need to. I can't get a job anywhere. Nobody will hire me. That's not my problem. Nadia told me what you're doing to her. Taking away her business, her home, everything. You're a psychopath. I pulled over to the side of the road and put the truck in park. Where are you, Casey? Wouldn't you like to know? Are you drunk? What's it to you? Because if you're drunk and driving, that's a violation of your probation. Frank told me about your record. Silence on the other end. Here's some free advice, I continued. Go home, sleep it off, and stay away from my wife. Because if I have to tell you again, the conversation won't be this polite. I hung up and drove home, but instead of going to the workshop, I parked where I could see the street. If Casey was drunk and stupid enough to show up at my house, I wanted to be ready. He didn't disappoint. The beat-up Honda Civic pulled into my driveway around 10 o'clock, music blaring, headlights weaving. Casey stumbled out of the driver's seat, and even from 50 yards away, I could see he was wasted. I called Frank first. I've got a drunk driver in my driveway. How fast can you get here? 5 minutes. Don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Darren, I'm not going to hurt him, but I'm not going to let him hurt me either. I grabbed a baseball bat from the garage and walked out to meet Casey halfway across the yard. He saw me coming and tried to straighten up, swaying on his feet. There he is, Casey slurred. The big man, the successful businessman. You're drunk, Casey. Get back in your car and go home. Or what? You'll call your cop friend? You'll ruin my life some more? Your life was ruined the minute you decided to sleep with my wife. He took a swing at me, telegraphing the punch so badly that I had time to step aside and watch him stumble past. He spun around, off balance, and I could see the rage and frustration in his red eyes. She doesn't love you, he said. She told me. She said you're boring and old and bad in bed. And yet she's still my wife. Not for long. You're right about that, but not for the reasons you think. Frank's patrol car pulled into the driveway, lights flashing, but no siren. He got out slowly, hand resting on his service weapon. Evening, gentlemen. Everything okay here? This man is intoxicated and trespassing on my property, I said. He drove here in that Honda. Frank looked at Casey, who was still swaying on his feet. Sir, have you been drinking tonight? Just a couple beers. Uh-huh. And you drove here? I'm fine to drive. Frank pulled out a breathalyzer. Let's find out. Casey blew a 12, well over the legal limit. Frank cuffed him and put him in the back of the patrol car while I watched from the porch. This isn't over, Casey shouted through the window as they drove away. But it was over. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I installed the new locks on the boutique and set up the security cameras. Nadia showed up around noon with Lena and a moving truck, expecting to salvage what she could from her failed business. The look on her face when her key didn't work was priceless. She pounded on the glass door, screaming my name, while Lena tried to calm her down and the moving crew stood around looking uncomfortable. I let them vent for about 10 minutes before I showed up. Problem, ladies? Open this door right now, Nadia demanded. I don't think I will. That's my inventory in there, my clothes, my accessories, everything I've worked for. Actually, it's collateral for the money you stole. Carmen filed the papers this morning. Lena stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. Darren, be reasonable. Nadia needs to sell that inventory to pay you back. Nadia needed to think about that before she decided to fund her boy toys lifestyle. Casey's in jail, Nadia said quietly. I heard. You had him arrested. He had himself arrested when he drove drunk to my house and tried to start a fight. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. The fight was going out of her, and I could see the exact moment she realized how completely she'd lost. What do you want? She asked. I want you to admit what you did. Out loud, in front of witnesses. Fine. I had an affair. I used business money to pay for things. I'm sorry. Not good enough. I pulled out my phone and opened the video recording app. Say it again, for the record. You can't be serious. Absolutely serious. She looked at Lena, who shrugged helplessly. The moving crew was pretending not to listen, but I could see them straining to catch every word. My name is Nadia Cole, she said, staring directly into the camera. I had an affair with Casey Holt. I used money from my husband's business to pay for dinners, trips, and gifts. I stole from my husband and my marriage. I'm sorry. I stopped recording and put the phone away. Now we're getting somewhere. Can I have my inventory back? Carmen will be in touch about liquidating the assets. You'll get whatever's left after legal fees and restitution. How much will that be? I pretended to think about it. Probably nothing. She started crying then, real tears this time, not the manipulative waterworks she'd tried before. Lena put an arm around her shoulders and glared at me like this was somehow my fault. You're enjoying this, Lena said. More than I probably should. You're destroying her. She destroyed herself. I'm just cleaning up the mess. I walked away, leaving them standing outside the locked boutique with their useless moving truck and their shattered dreams. Phase 3 complete. That evening, I got a call from Carmen with an update on the divorce proceedings. The judge approved our request for expedited proceedings based on the embezzlement evidence, she said. We can have this wrapped up in 30 days instead of 6 months. What about the house? Since it was purchased before the marriage with your money, it's separate property. She has no claim to it. And the business? Dissolved as of today. All assets will be liquidated to pay creditors and legal fees. How much will she walk away with? If she's lucky, maybe $10,000. If she's not lucky, she might owe money. I hung up and opened a beer, sitting on my back porch and watching the sun set over the property I'd bought and paid for. Tomorrow, I'd start changing the locks on the house. By the end of the week, Nadia would be out of my life forever. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know what you did to Casey. You'll pay for this. I showed it to Frank when he stopped by an hour later. Probably one of his friends, Frank said. I wouldn't worry about it. Casey's looking at 6 months for the DUI and his crew isn't exactly the criminal mastermind type. What about Nadia? What about her? Think she'll cause trouble? Frank finished his beer and stood up. Nadia's broke, homeless, and about to be divorced. She's got bigger problems than revenge. He was wrong, but I wouldn't find that out until later. The Riverside Summer Festival was supposed to be my victory lap. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was finally ready to show my face in public again. The whole town would be there, and I wanted them to see that I'd survived Nadia's betrayal stronger than ever. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. I was manning the classic car display, showing off my restored '67 Camaro, when I saw her approaching through the crowd. She looked different, thinner, cheaper somehow. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by discount store knockoffs. Her hair, which had always been perfectly styled, hung limp and unwashed around her shoulders. But her eyes were full of hate. Hello, Darren. Nadia. A small crowd had gathered around my car, admiring the paint job and asking questions about the restoration. I could feel their attention shifting to us, sensing drama. Nice car, she said loudly. I remember when you bought it, right around the time you started ignoring your wife. I remember when you started sleeping with the barista. Gasps from the crowd. Someone pulled out their phone to record. Perfect. You destroyed my life, she continued, her voice getting higher. You took everything from me. My business, my home, my friends. You took those things from yourself when you decided to steal from me. I never stole anything. I pulled out my phone and played the video I'd recorded outside the boutique. Her own voice, clear as day. I used money from my husband's business to pay for dinners, trips, and gifts. I stole from my husband and my marriage. The crowd murmured, and I saw several people shaking their heads in disgust. Nadia's face went white as she realized what I'd done. You tricked me into saying that. I didn't trick you into doing it. She lunged at me then, nails extended, screaming incoherently. I caught her wrists and held her at arm's length while she thrashed and kicked. Let me go, you bastard. Calm down, Nadia, you're making a scene. I don't care. I want everyone to know what kind of man you really are. What kind of man am I? A controlling, abusive, heartless monster who destroys anyone who doesn't worship him. I looked around at the crowd, which had grown to include half the festival. Phones were recording from every angle. By tonight, this would be all over social media. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, still holding my struggling ex-wife, I present to you Nadia Cole, who stole $50,000 from her husband's business to fund her affair with a 27-year-old barista. That's not true. We have bank records. We have receipts. We have her confession on video. You're lying. I let go of her wrists and stepped back. She stumbled, nearly falling, then straightened up and tried to salvage some dignity. He's trying to destroy me because I left him, she announced to the crowd. He can't stand that I found someone younger and better. Found someone younger, I agreed. Too bad you couldn't afford to keep him. That got a laugh from the crowd. Nadia's face flushed red. Casey loved me. Casey loved your credit cards. He's in jail because of you. He's in jail because he drove drunk to my house and tried to start a fight, but don't worry. I'm sure he'll find someone new to leech off of when he gets out. She started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You want to know the truth? She screamed through her tears. The truth is that you're a cold, heartless man who never loved me. You loved owning me. If that's what you want to call 20 years of supporting your dreams and funding your lifestyle, sure. I gave you the best years of my life. And I gave you everything you ever wanted, right up until you decided it wasn't enough. She wiped her nose on her sleeve, looking around at the crowd that was staring at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yeah, it is. She turned and walked away, pushing through the crowd that parted to let her pass. I watched her go, feeling nothing but relief. Damn, Darren. It was my neighbor, Bob Mitchell, shaking his head in amazement. I had no idea. Most people didn't. How are you holding up? Better than ever, actually. And it was true. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The weight of the failed marriage, the betrayal, the legal battles, it was all finally over. I spent the rest of the festival talking to old friends, accepting condolences and congratulations in equal measure. Everyone wanted to know the details, and I was happy to share them. By the end of the day, the whole town knew exactly what Nadia had done and what it had cost her. That evening, I was cleaning up my workshop when Frank stopped by with news. Interesting day at the festival, he said. You could say that. Nadia's little performance is all over Facebook. Someone counted. It's been shared over 3,000 times already. Good. There's something else. Casey got out of jail this morning. I looked up from the engine I was working on. And he's already left town, packed up his stuff and headed back to whatever hole he crawled out of. Smart move. Lena's gone too. Apparently she decided this town wasn't big enough for all the drama. That surprised me. Lena had lived here her whole life. Where'd she go? Phoenix, I heard. Got a job at some yoga studio out there. I went back to work on the engine, thinking about the chain reaction I'd set in motion. Nadia's affair hadn't just destroyed our marriage. It had blown up her entire social circle, scattered her friends and allies to the wind. You know what the funny thing is? Frank said. What's that? She could have just asked for a divorce, could have been honest about being unhappy, You probably would have been fair about the settlement. Probably. Instead, she had to lie and cheat and steal. Had to make it personal. Her choice. And now she's got nothing. I tightened a bolt and stepped back to admire my work. The engine was purring like a contented cat, all the parts working in perfect harmony. She's got exactly what she earned, I said. Frank finished his beer and stood up to leave. What's next for you? Thinking about taking a trip. Maybe drive the Camaro cross-country, see some sights. Sounds nice. Want to come along? Can't. Too much crime to fight in our sleepy little town. He left, and I went back to work. Outside, the sun was setting over the property that was finally, completely mine. No more lies, no more betrayal, no more drama. Just peace. I pulled out my phone and deleted the last few contacts that connected me to my old life. Nadia's number, Casey's, Lena's, even the boutique's business line that no longer existed. 20 years of marriage, gone with a few taps on a screen. I opened a beer, turned up the radio, and got back to work. Tomorrow, I'd start planning that cross-country trip. Tonight, I just wanted to enjoy the silence. For the first time in months, I was exactly where I wanted to be,